Hey guys, let's talk about the basics of Python. But what is Python anyway? Python is a well-known, high-level programming language used in tons of applications and software. It was made to be as simple and as readable as possible, and learning it will teach you a lot about code, computers, and technology. So what can you make with Python? Because of Python's simplicity and versatility, tons of apps use Python, such as Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, Reddit, and Dropbox, to name a few. Python is also used for scientific and mathematical purposes. Lots of research that involves statistics or number crunching use Python to do the heavy lifting. Computer science research, such as AI research, uses Python too. We will be using Jupyter Notebook to code. Jupyter Notebook is an IDE or integrated development environment that gives you all the tools you need to write code. We'll use it because it's relatively convenient to set up and lets you test small pieces of code directly. First of all, Python is basically a glorified calculator. It can compute basic calculations. For example, if you try to input 10 times 8 plus 4, all divided by 2, then if you press Shift Enter, it'll run and give you the answer 42. It wouldn't be much just to do math. Python allows you to do a lot more. Printing the statement hello world is often the first thing a programmer learns to do. You can write print parentheses and then hello world in double quotation marks to print hello world. By writing code, we give a series of instructions for the computer to follow. Unless otherwise specified, the computer reads the code sequentially. Each line of the code represents a task that you want the computer to execute. It may be performing a calculation, defining or modifying variables, printing, or more. For example, this code prints 1, then it prints 2, then it prints 3 in sequence. Coding is all about setting up the right tasks or operations in the right order to solve a complex problem. In a way, it's kind of like math, but more fun. Think about how you solve problems in real life. If you, for example, lost your keys and you want to find it, you first ask yourself where it could be. Then you look there, and if it's not there, you keep looking. You sequentially go through the steps to find the answer. Computers do the same thing. So, computers are calculating machines, and they calculate sequentially. But when you do a calculation, you manipulate numbers algebraically and write them on paper. When a computer does math, they write numbers in memory. These values, like in math, are called variables. You can think about variables as values that can change, such as temperature or time, etc. You can define variables like you do in math, by, for example, writing number 1 equals 100. Then you can use number 1 in place of any other number. We call number 1 the variable name and 100 its value. Variables can be used in three ways. Variables can be declared, as we've shown before, or in the exact same way, variables can be written to. Variables can also be used in a calculation, like any other number, using plus or minus with some other values, for example. The computer uses its value in the calculation, which can be printed or stored in another variable. There are different types of variables, such as integers, floats, strings, or booleans. Integer values are self-explanatory, and they store integer values. Floats can store decimal values, and they're called floats because of the floating decimal point, meaning it can be anywhere in the number. Strings are lists or combinations of characters, such as the hello world example, and any sentence can be a string. Booleans are binary values that have two possible values, true, 1, or false, 0. They can also be used to represent whether something is true or false logically. These values have operations like add and subtract for integers and floats. Strings can be concatenated or stuck together by using plus. Booleans can also be combined using logic like and or. Here are some examples on how to use variables. Make sure to code along with me to get an idea of how it works. As mentioned, before using a variable, you need to declare the variable beforehand so the computer knows that it exists, and what type of variable it is. So, we define variable number 1 as 100, and then we print it. Surprise, it prints 100 in the console. In the next line, we set the value of number 1 to itself plus 1. Don't get confused, this isn't an equation. The right side is calculated first, and then it's stored on the left side. So number 1 becomes 100 plus 1, and when we print it, we get 101. Let's take a look at some examples using strings. Here, variable x is defined with the string Mr. Lin is, and variable y is defined with the string awesome. Then z is defined as x plus y. Remember, with strings, adding concatenates them together. When we print z, we get Mr. Lin is awesome. Computers make a lot of decisions when doing calculations. When making decisions, we often need to know whether a criteria is satisfied. Similarly, when we require a computer to make a decision, there needs to be a statement to allow the computer to make a judgment. For a dumb example, if you want to procrastinate, you need to check whether you've done your homework or not. If statements allow us to choose between two different actions. If a condition is satisfied, it follows the true branch and it executes action A on the blue branch. Otherwise, if the condition is not satisfied, the computer will go down the false branch, which is red, and execute action B. After executing A or B, the computer will execute action C in sequence. The notation is kind of finicky. The if statement begins with if, then the condition in brackets, then a colon. Action A and B, which can be multiple lines of code, has to be tabbed once or else the computer won't know when to run it. The else condition also has a colon after it. Here's how we represent conditions in programming. Conditions are booleans, so, as mentioned, they can either be true or false. So here are some conditions in which we compare the size of two variables. Example of conditions. Let's say you'd like to buy something, and of course you can only buy it if you have enough money. Let's let the user input how much money they have and store it in the money variable. Let's store the price of $25 in the price variable. If you have enough money, meaning that money is greater than or equal to price, we reduce the amount of money by the price and then print bought. When writing if, remember the notation, if, then brackets, and then a colon, and the next lines are tabbed. We use else to indicate what happens if the condition is not satisfied. When we don't have enough money, we simply print not enough money here broke. In this challenge, we need to figure out whether an integer is between two other values. For example, we want to identify whether a number is greater than 2, between 2 and 4, or greater than 2 and 4. Hope you learned something from the video and see you in the next one.